Have you ever felt like you're giving everything in your career, but you're just not reaching the stage and progressing like you want to? You're not alone, and it's actually a very common trap. I've had the privilege of working with thousands of executives from some of the world's best businesses and from a variety of different cultures. And one thing I can tell you is that if you're not focused on what you're doing now and the mistakes that you're missing out on, then this could come back to haunt you in the future and will not be something you can pick up later. One big trap that I see many people fall into is not realizing that they've got a boss that is more obsessed about their own development and their own promotion than assisting the people underneath them in their team. Now, this doesn't make your boss a bad person, because they're ambitious. They've got to where they are because they're an ambitious individual, and it also doesn't mean they don't care about you. But the big mistake you can make is not understanding and seeing this and making sure that you're looking at other avenues to build connections to get you that promotion. Far too many people rely on just going to their immediate boss to understand around, are they building that visibility with their boss to actually get them to the next level? But the reality is that your boss at the moment may not be having those conversations with the HR team or with the broader promotion team around you being an individual that needs to be moved up to the next level. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't still speak to your boss about this, because that's an important strategy. But what you've also got to do is be speaking with other peers of your boss's level, maybe in other sectors of the business or other business units or even other functions, to be able to show that intent that you still feel like you can get to the next level. You can't rely on this granular path within this specific area of the business. I see people in the corporate world going 100 miles an hour and never actually taking time to pause and reflect on what they're actually doing, or if the time they're putting into their job is actually effective. We all think that working hard is all we need to do to get promoted, but actually you have to be somebody that is actively seeking feedback, and not just from your superiors, but from your peers around you, and most importantly, the people that are actually more junior than you. If you are able to focus on looking at the people that are actually more junior than you in the business, getting feedback from them and understanding how they perceive you as a more senior person in the business, this is a great way to think about how you can show up as a future leader when you do progress through the ranks to a more senior role. Now, feedback truly is a gift, and it's something that as human beings we are particularly, not that fond of sometimes hearing, because it can be quite difficult to hear constructive criticism around what we think we're good at when actually we may not be. But if you come into these things with a really open mind and really think around, why am I seeking this feedback? That it's not just to get promoted or earn more money, but it's actually to have a much more fulfilling life and be a happier person, and somewhat a better person is probably the best thing I'd say about it. So there's no doubting that hard work is a key aspect to be able to be successful in your career. But has anyone ever told you the term visibility and what that means? What I mean by visibility is, are you creating this perception that you're somebody that's able to get involved and actually be present in different ways than what's expected of you? So I was speaking to one of my clients over the last few weeks, and one of the things she said to me is that this certain individual who was a VP level within the business had so much talent and so much technical capability, but she said one thing that this individual lacked was that they weren't able to be visible and really show that they were participating and being very active when part of a broader audience or with the broader team. Now, if you think about why this may have been important, yes, people would buy into them and look up to them as a leader, but if they're not able to be visible and actually be someone that people want to follow, then why would you pick that individual to move forward? Now, the good thing is this doesn't have to be something that comes naturally to you. You can actually be coached around this, and the first step of doing that is actually awareness. So if you think about this concept of visibility as being something to work on, it's a big factor versus just working hard. If there's one thing that the pandemic taught us, is that results actually speak louder than hours worked. And this is such an important concept for you to understand in the modern world, because we were programmed many years ago to actually understand that if you're the first one in the office and the last one to leave, then you're going to be the most successful. Now, that there is some truth in that, because clearly if you are really embedded into your work and you're putting as maximum effort in, as many hours as you can, then there is a high chance that you're going to be successful, but there's also a very high chance that you're going to burn out as well. So really focus on impact and results rather than hours worked, and stop being that busy fool. Now, I've worked with many big corporates where I see individuals where they're actually not being very smart around what they're doing and the hours that they're working. So if you think about impact versus results versus time worked, you've got to find this formula and balance around it all, because at the end of the day, all your bosses truly care about, if you're in the right organization, is, are you getting the results needed for the business in your own way and method of working? We're not trying to create a sort of army of robots that all work in the same way, shape or form. We want individuals to shine through, and ultimately you've got to be able to have that flexibility to adapt to your working hours and know who you are as a person to be most effective. And the way to do that is really think about, how do you work smart? How do you work effectively? And how do you work out the methods that really adapt well for you as an individual? It doesn't mean because your friend or your colleague on the other side of the office gets results by working a certain way that it'll work for you. You've got to understand who you really are on this point. Okay, so you're in the finance function today and you know you want to become the finance director of a business unit, or you're running a marketing team for one of the brands, but you want to become the overall chief marketing officer. It doesn't matter which function you're in. The point here is that you can't be obsessed with just getting promoted within the area of the business that you're working in today. Now, it may not have been in your original plan that you want to go and do a stint in a different function or in a different division or even in a different geography in the business. But the reality is, guys, is that you need to have a lot more flexibility today to be able to get promoted. You can't just say, I want to be in this role or just this role, and it has to be in this exact location, because there isn't as many roles available the more senior you get. So the one thing I could say to you is, if you do want to get promoted and get to the top levels in companies, you have to have this flexibility to be able to actually be adaptable to your life situation. Now, I understand that everyone's family situation isn't the same, and this is something that you have to do when you're at home talking to your spouse or your family, and broader family, let's say, and even your children. But just think about it, because that more flexibility that you have to take roles in different locations or perhaps different functions, it's going to create a lot more opportunities for you to actually move up. It doesn't mean you can't then move back into a higher position in the area you're at before, but just don't be so one-track minded in terms of which areas you can actually get a promotion into. Believe it or not, one of the key things to focus on if you really want to become at the top of your game and the most senior position in a company is putting the company before yourself. Now, don't get me wrong, you need to show ambition and you need to show the skills to be able to achieve the positions that you want to get yourself into. But I learned the hard way from this, and I'm going to share a small story here around a personal experience. I had an end of year review with my CEO a few years back, and one of the things they said to me was, look, we know how talented you are and what you're bringing to the company, but we don't know how much you want to bring to the actual company itself and how much you want to put the company first. Now, I found this feedback quite difficult to actually listen to, because I always felt what I was doing for the company when I was performing was obviously helping the company reach its potential. Now, it is true to a certain extent, what I've just said there, but if you think about it a different way, my leadership were looking for me to stop thinking about what's best for James, but actually what's best for my company that I'm in today. Now, that's a very, very different mindset, because what you're doing there is you're actually saying every decision you make and everything you discuss with colleagues and the way you talk with clients, etc., is about your firm and what you're doing in the interest of the firm's strategy and the company's strategy, not just what your own personal strategy is. So this is a very, very small difference, but it's a really important one for you to understand, because if you're not showing that you're putting the company first and you're aligning your own personal ambitions to the company's goals, then you're just going to stand out in a bad way to what you actually want to be perceived as. Now, one thing we all know about, and we absolutely have all been involved in the past, is what we call office politics. Every company, big or small, has some form of office politics, and it's very difficult sometimes to avoid it. But one thing that I can tell you right now is that if you get sucked into office politics and you get involved in a clique, then you're in your express lane to not becoming a leader. Because leadership is all about being able to stay neutral. Leadership is all about being able to stay away from this gossip. But the problem is, in the modern world, so many individuals like to get involved in these situations. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that elements of the C-suite of some of the world's biggest companies don't form opinions or say things behind people's backs, but just be smart around who you hang around with and who you're associated with, because these optics around who you spend your time with in the company have an absolutely profound impact on your ability to get promoted. An example of this would be, say you're hanging around with somebody that everybody knows perhaps drinks too much, every company do, or say you're hanging around with an individual that has been questioned on their integrity before, or the way that they communicate with certain individuals. Yes, you may not be the one doing the wrong here, but if you're seen with that person a lot, then people are probably going to put two and two together and think that you're probably quite like that person. So the way to think about this is surround yourself with people that you aspire to be like, and really think about those elements of integrity. And from a leadership perspective, are these behaviors that you're seeing these individuals that you're hanging around with the types of things that you would be attracted to as an individual as well? You know, it's not easy, as I said, to stay away from this stuff, but just take a step back. Don't always get carried away in every situation, and you will be in a good position then from an office politics perspective to present yourself in a way that will actually help you get the job that you want. Let me tell you something, if you're not somebody that is prepared to put themselves forward to try something new, even if you're not 100% sure that you've got the skills to succeed, you're never going to reach your full potential, or you're never going to get promoted to that next role that you really want. You've got to be someone that is showing the leaders around you and the people that make the decisions that you are willing to take a risk, because ultimately the people that get to the top positions in the companies, yes, they have very strong risk management skills, but if you think for a second that every single step they took to get to where they are today was done knowing 100% in confidence that they were going to actually achieve the right result, then you're sadly mistaken. Because yes, people move forward, but they also move backwards. And sometimes taking something on and making a mistake is actually a huge sign of growth and actually a great step forward to get to your potential. Because it's okay to take one step back if it means you then take 2 steps forward, because that gives you a net positive of 1 step forward. So I want you to really think about this concept of taking risks and actually putting yourself outside of your comfort zone. As long as you're really aware of how you're achieving or how you're performing when you are moving forward into that unknown area. And if it is going wrong, have that self-discipline and have that humility to realize that this isn't working out so well, and then take a step back, recalculate and think, how can I do this differently? Or more importantly, be vulnerable, open up and actually ask people for assistance and actually ask people for support on how they can help you through this. Because another thing that I see in the corporate world all the time is people think if you make a decision to take something on, the success or failure is deemed all around you doing it all on your own, which is not the case. You're in a team. That's what you're all there for, to help each other. So get that confidence to try something new, and I promise you that will help you move forward to where you want to get to from a promotion perspective. But more importantly, it will show the others around you that make the decisions that you've got the mindset to take risks.